Hanukkah. Welcome back to the road trip. Kingdom builders, road trippers, Akim and Akka team. Brothers and sisters, mothers, fathers, aunties and uncles, grandmas and grandpas, everybody. Shalom, shalom, peace and blessings to each and every single one of you, your homes, your dwelling places, your children, your loved ones, your friends, and your pets. Them little fur babies, man, little fur nagas. That's right, man. Shalom, man. Shalom. Peace and blessings, man. All praises to the Most High, Abba Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai. Glory to Yahweh Shai. Honors to the Ruach HaKodesh. My love and my respect to each and every single one of y'all. You know that. You know that. Yeah. All right. All right, man. Second Maccabees. We're back in the scrolls, man. We're back in the book. That's right, man. We're back in the book. It's going to be Second Maccabees chapter 7. Chapter 7 and 8. I'm going to do both of them. That's right. Here we are. All right. You want to follow along with me? That'd be kind of cool. Get your scrolls along. Get your scrolls up. If you got the Apocrypha with you, you can follow along with me. All right. It shouldn't take too long. I'm thinking, just looking at these ones. I don't know, maybe 17, 18 minutes video, something like that. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But with no further ado, I'm going to try to read as accurately as I possibly can. So let's get it. Let's get it, man. Second Maccabees chapter 7. Let's begin, family. Let's begin. All right, chapter 7, and it reads, And it came to pass that 7 kindred, also with their mother, were at the king's command, taken to shamefully handled with scourges and cords, to compel them to taste of the abominable swine's flesh. But one of them made himself the spokesman and said, What would you ask and learn of us? For we are ready to die rather than transgress the laws of our fathers. And the king fell into a rage and commanded the heat pans and cauldrons. And when these were heated, he commanded to cut out the tongue of him that had been their spokesman, and to scalp him, and to cut off his extremities. The rest of his kindred and his mother looking on. And when he was utterly maimed, the king commanded to bring him to the fire, being yet alive, and to fry him in the pan. And as the vapor of the pan spread far, they and their mother also exhorted one another to die nobly, saying, The Most High Elohim sees, and in truth is entreated for us, as Moshe declared in his song, which witnesses against the people to their faces, saying, And he will be treated for his servants. And when the first had died, after this manner, they brought the second to the mocking, and they pulled off the skin of his head, and with the hair, and asked him, Will you eat before your body is punished in every limb? But he answered in the language of his fathers, and said to them, No. Therefore he also underwent the next torture in succession, as the first had done. And when he was at the last gasp, he said, You miscreant, release us out of this present life, but the King of the world will raise us up, who have died for his laws, for an eternal renewal of life. And after him was the third made a mocking stock. And when he was required, he quickly put out his tongue, and stretched out his hand courageously, and nobly said, From heaven I possess these, and for his law's sake I treat these with contempt. And from him I hope to receive these back again, insomuch that the king himself and those who were with him were astonished at the young man's soul, for he regarded the pain as nothing. And when he too was dead, they shamefully handled and tortured the fourth in the like manner. And being come near to death, he said, It is good to die at the hands of men, and look for the hopes which are given by Yahweh, that we will be raised up again by him. For as for you, you will have no resurrection to life. And next after him they brought the fifth, and shamefully handled him. But he looked toward the king and said, Because you have authority among men, though you are yourself corruptible, you do what you will. Yet think not that our race has been forsaken of Yahweh. Never. 17. But hold you on your way, and behold his sovereign majesty, how it will torture you and your seed. And after him they brought the sixth. And when he was at the point to die, he said, Be not vainly deceived, for we suffer these things for our own doings, as sinning against our own Elohim. Marvelous things are come to pass. But do not think that you will be unpunished, having essayed to fight against Yahweh. But above all was the mother marvelous and worthy of honorable memory. For when she looked at the 7 sons perishing within the space of one day, she bare the sight with a good courage, for the hopes that she had set on the Most High. And she exhorted each one of them in the language of their fathers, filled with a noble temper and stirring up her womanish thought. With manly passion sang to them, I know not how you came into my womb, neither was it I that bestowed on you your ruach and your life. And it was not I that brought into order the first elements of each one of you. Therefore, the Creator of the world, who fashioned the generation of man and devised the generation of all things in mercy, gives back to you again both your ruach and your life, as you now treat yourselves with contempt for his law's sake. But Antiochus, thinking himself to be despised and suspecting the reproachful voice, while the youngest was yet alive, didn't only make his appeal to him by words, but also at the same time promised with oaths that he would enrich him and raise him to high estate, if he would turn from the customs of his fathers, and that he would take him for his friend, and entrust him with affairs. But when the young man would in no wise give heed, the king called to him his mother, and exhorted her that she would counsel the lad to save himself. And when he had exhorted her with many words, she undertook to persuade her son. And bending toward him, laughing the cruel tyrant to scorn, she spoke this in the language of their fathers, My son, have pity upon me that carried you 9 months in my womb, and give you suck 3 years, and nourished and brought you up to this age, and sustained you. I implore you, my child, to lift your eyes to the heaven and to the earth, and to see all things that are in it, and so to recognize that Yahweh made them not of things that were, and that the race of men in this way comes into being. She said to her son, Don't be afraid of this butcher, but proving yourself worthy of your kindred, accept your death, that in the mercy of Yahweh I may receive you again with your kindred. But before she had yet ended speaking, the young man said, Whom do you wait for? I obey not in the commandment of the king, but I listen to the commandment of the law that was given to our fathers through Moshe. But you that have devised all manner of evil against the Hebrews will in no wise escape the hands of Yahweh. For we are suffering because of our own sins. And if for rebuke the chastising of our living Elohim has been angered a little while, yet will he again be reconciled with his own servants. But you, O unholy, unkodesh man, and of all most vile, be not vainly lifted up in your wild pride, with uncertain hopes, raising your hand against the heavenly children. For not yet have you escaped the judgment of the Almighty, the El Shaddai Kodesh, Yahweh, that sees all things. For these our kindred have endured a short pain that brings everlasting life, have now died under Yahweh's covenant. But you, through the judgment of Yahweh, will receive in just measure the penalties of your arrogance. But I, as my kindred, give up both body and soul for the laws of our fathers, calling upon Yahweh, that he may speedily become gracious to the nation, and that you, amidst trials and plagues, may confess that he alone is Elohim, and that in me and my kindred you may stay the wrath of the Almighty, the El Shaddai, right? Which has been justly brought upon our whole race. But the king, falling into rage, handled him worse than all the rest, being exasperated at his mocking. So he also died pure from pollution, putting his whole trust in the Most High. And last of all, after her sons, the mother died. Let it then suffice to have said so much concerning the enforcement of sacrificial feasts and the king's exceeding barbarities. That's the end of chapter 7. What a dog, man. What a dog. But you know what I'm saying? Honor all the way to death, man. Death before dishonor. You know what I'm saying? All right, man. Hallelujah. Would you be able to do it? Would you be able to do it? Watching all your brothers die before you? All 6 brothers die before you? And you're last? And you know your mom's going to be next? How would you do? You could say it now, but would you be strong in that moment of calamity? In that moment of affliction? Would you be strong enough to stand for your Elohim and take that knife and that torture to death? Could you do it? Yeah, just food for thought, you know what I'm saying? Let's continue, chapter 8. But Judas, who was also called Maccabees, and those who were with him, making their way privily into the villages, called to them their kinsfolk, and taking to them such as had continued in the Yahudim's religion, gathered together as many as 6,000, And they called upon the Most High, imploring him to look upon the people that were oppressed by all, and to have compassion on the sanctuary also that had been profaned by the ungodly men, and to have pity on the city also that was suffering ruin, and ready to be made level with the ground, and to listen to the blood that cried to him, and to remember also the lawless slaughter of the innocent infants, and the blasphemies that had been committed against him, his name, and to show his hatred of wickedness. And when Maccabees had trained his men for service, the heathen at once found him irresistible, for that the wrath of the Most High was turned into pity. And coming unawares, he set fire to cities and villages, and in winning back the most important positions, putting to flight no small number of enemies. He especially took advantage of the nights for such assaults, and his courage was loudly talked of everywhere. But when Philip saw the men gaining ground by little, and increasing more and more in his prosperity, he wrote to Ptolemy, the governor of Coelesyria and Phoenicia, and he should support the king's cause. And Ptolemy quickly appointed Nicanor, the son of Paroclus, one of the king's chief friends, and sent him in command of no fewer than 20,000 of all nations to destroy the whole race of Judea. And with him he joined Gorgias, also a captain and one that had experience in matters of war. And Nicanor undertook by the sale of the captive Yahudim, to make up for the king the tribute of 2,000 talents which he was to pay the Romans. And immediately he sent to the cities upon the sea coasts, inviting them to buy Jewish or Yahudi slaves, right? Yahudim slaves, promising to allow 80 slaves for a talent, not expecting the judgment that was to follow upon him from the Almighty, from the El Shaddai. But tidings came to Judas concerning the inroad of Nicanor, and when he communicated to those who were with him the presence of the army, those who were cowardly and distrustful of the judgment of Yahweh ran away and left the country, and others sold all that was left over to them, and withal implored the Most High to deliver those who had been sold as slaves by the impious Nicanor before he ever met them. And this, if not for their own sakes, yet for the covenants made with their fathers, and because he had called them by their reverend and glorious name. And Maccabeus gathered his men together, 6,000 in number, and exhorted them not to be stricken with dismay at the enemy, nor to fear the great multitude of the heathen who came wrongfully against them, but to contend nobly, setting before their eyes the outrage that had been lawlessly perpetuated upon the Kodesh place, and the shameful handling of the city that had been turned to mockery, and further, the overthrow of the mode of the life received from their ancestors. All right? From their ancestors, man. You know what I'm saying? The disgrace. All right. Verse 18, and it reads, "For they said, he trusts to arms and with all the deeds of daring, but we trust to the Almighty Elohim, since he is able to, at the beck, to cast down those who are coming against us, and even the whole world. And moreover, he recounted to them the help given from time to time in the days of their ancestors, both the help given in the days of Sennacherib, how that 185,000 perished, and the help given in the land of Babylon, even the battle that was fought against the Gauls, how that they came to the engagement, 8,000 in all, with 4,000 Maccabeans, and how that the Maccabeans, being hard pressed, the 6,000 destroyed the 120,000 because of the help which they had from heaven, and took great booty. And when he had with these words made them of good courage, and ready to die for the laws of their country, he divided his army into 4 parts, appointing his kindred to be with himself leaders of the several bands, to wit Simon and Joseph and Jonathan, giving each the command of 1,500 men. And moreover Eleazar also, then having read aloud the sacred book, and having given as watchword the help of Yahweh, leading with first band himself, he joined battle with Nicanor. And since the Almighty fought on their side, they killed of the enemy above 9,000, and wounded the disabled the more part of Nicanor's army, and compelled all to flee. And they took the money of those that had come there to buy them, and after they had pursued them for some distance, they returned, being constrained by the time of the day. For it was the day before the Shabbat, and for this cause they made no effort to chase far from them far. And when they had gathered the arms of the enemy together, and had stripped off their spoils, they occupied themselves about the Shabbat, blessing and thanking the Most High exceedingly, who had saved them to this day, for that he had caused a beginning of mercy to distill upon them. And after the Shabbat, when they had given of the spoils to the maimed, and to the widows and orphans, the residue they distributed among themselves and their children. And when they had accomplished these things, and had made a common supplication, they implored the merciful Yahweh to be holy, right? Wholly reconciled with his servants. And having had an encounter with the forces of Timotheus and Bacchiades, they killed above 20,000 of them, and made themselves masters of strongholds exceedingly high, and divided very much plunder, giving the maimed and orphans and the widows, and moreover the aged also, an equal share with themselves. All fair. 31. And when they had gathered the arms of the enemy together, they stored them all up carefully in the most important positions, and the residue of the spoils they carried into Jerusalem. And they killed the phylarch of Timotheus's force, a most unholy man, and one who had done the Yahudim much hurt. And as they kept the feast of victory in the city of their fathers, they burned those that had set the sacred gates on fire, and among them Calistines, who had fled into the outhouse. And so they received the meet reward of their impiety. And the thrice accursed Nicanor, who had brought the 1,000 merchants to buy the Yahudim for slaves, being through the help of the Most High humbled by them, who in his eyes were held to be of least account, put off his glorious apparel, and passing through the midland, shunning all company like a fugitive slave, arrived at Antioch, having, as he thought, had the greatest possible good fortune, though his army was destroyed. And he that had taken upon him to make tribute sure for the Romans by the captivity of the men of Jerusalem, published abroad that the Yahudim had one who fought for them, and that because this was so, the Yahudim were invulnerable, because they followed the laws ordained by him. That's the end of chapter 8. And see, as long as the Israelites were following the laws, statutes, and following all the commandments, and they weren't sinning, they were living righteous lives, they couldn't lose a battle. You see, even 9,000, even a couple thousand beat over 120,000. You see what I'm saying? They can't die. I mean, they're almost like invincible. And when you hear about, like, you guys saw the movie 300, right? That movie is really about Gideon. They lied. It's really not the Greek 300. There was no such thing as 300 Greeks, Spartans that fought off. Man, that's all a lie. It was Gideon's army of 300 that fought off a whole bunch of the heathens, right? But in that movie, you know how they're going against a certain group they call the Invincibles, right? Well, they're not telling you in that movie because, you know, they were fighting with the Persians and Xerxes and all that kind of stuff. And these one group of people, they said, are almost like not fully alive, not fully dead, but they were just invincible and they could just kill at will, and they were almost like ghosts. They were talking about the Yahudim. That's who they're talking about. The ones that were all dressed in black and stuff. Yeah. Hollywood doesn't want to tell you the truth. They're talking about the Israelites. That's who they were. The Invincibles were the Israelites. That's who it was. All right. So we just finished up chapter 8. All right. We're going to get back into chapter 9 coming up real soon. All right. In the meantime, in between time, shalom, shalom. Peace and blessings to each and every single one of y'all. All praises to the Most High. I love you. Yeah. All right.